All right, next we'll talk about contextual measures. We have about 40 minutes or so. Part of this was mentioned yesterday during Brit's talk. So let's dive right into it. First off, thanks go to the contextual measures group. I believe I listed everyone that contributed here. I apologize if I missed you all, but we have the CM group there on the left. And then we have the very important NIH representatives that were very helpful during this process, especially given their knowledge of all of us. And of course, RTI kept us in line and kept everything nice and oriented and organized. And so they were critical to the process as well. So here's an overview of the discussion today. We're going to review the contextual measures as they relate to first module 1, which is where we have most of the burden, and then modules 2 and 3. Now, a little bit about the contextual measures section. By all means, refer to the MOP. So I generated these slides as of the most recent version of the MOP from a few days ago, from the 15th. But we are still going to make a few minor tweaks to the MOP here within the next couple of days. So the slide deck is up to date as of today, but by all means, be sure to look at the final MOP. You'll remember that in the protocol, we have a decent description of the contextual measures, but a lot of the details for administration are reserved for the MOP, where we had a bit more space. Also, please assume that all of the contextual measures instruments that we talk about today will be administered via REDCap. So during the discussion today, we're going to talk about a couple of decision rules and when you do X and not Y with contextual measures. Hopefully, much of that will be automated because we'll administer these via REDCap. So Ronke is working very hard back at RTI to program all of this, so thanks go to her, but that'll really make all of our lives a bit easier. Also remember that we have to obtain information from the All of Us workbench to inform what tests we administer during contextual measures. So that'll be more clear here in a minute when I go over those details, but please recognize that you will have to go into the workbench, look up your participant, and see when they completed certain surveys for all of us to know whether or not they received those surveys during NPH. Possibly some of that can be automated with Ronke and the system, but we just don't know yet. So we'll hammer out those details here in the next couple of weeks, but please be prepared to do so. When you go into the workbench, per our understanding, you will be able to see when your participant completed the surveys, but you may not see the actual data in there. And apparently that's okay because it has to go through a QC process. Do you have a question?
Not the workbench. All data in the researcher workbench is de-identified.
Sorry?
All data in the researcher workbench is de-identified.
Yep.
You'll be using Health Pro.
Thank you. Health Pro. Okay, thank you for that. All right, so moving on. The first thing we want to talk about are some general updates about the VAS. So the visual analog scales, or VASs, were mentioned yesterday in Brit's talk, and she did a very good job at summarizing how the VAS data are collected during the MMTTs. I have this slide here to just kind of summate the VAS data because during NPH, we're administering 2 separate forms of VASs. So firstly, in modules 1, 2, and 3, so across all the modules, we're administering what we call retrospective VASs. Those are ratings of 5 different appetite measures, which are listed there. It's hunger, satisfaction, fullness, and prospective food consumption. And the participants will answer those questions and rate their average appetite rating over the past week. All right, so we just administer each one of these 4 once, and they make their average rating over the past week. So that goes through all of the different modules. But you'll also remember that during the MMTTs, they'll receive additional VASs continuously, right? So every time they do a blood draw during the MMTTs, they're going to complete those series of VASs. However, they make the rating for how they feel at this moment. Now, VASs are very easy to administer, and in fact, they're too easy to administer, meaning that we and the participants don't always read the instructions. So stop, folks. When the participant sits down, have them read the instructions and paraphrase back to you what they have to do, because they could very well think that they're doing average ratings again during the MMTT when they should be making ratings for how they feel at the moment. So please be sure that they internalize those instructions and they're answering them correctly. The other thing that Britt noted that I thought was very helpful here in the past few days is that during the MMTTs, have them do the VASs just right before the blood draw. So if you go into the room, say 2 minutes before you do the blood draw or 3 minutes, make sure they're all situated, have them do the VASs, and then pull the blood at the correct time. Therefore, if you happen to have problem pulling blood, you already have the VAS data collected, and their ratings won't be affected by maybe the pain or something from having the IV moved around or whatever needs to happen there. Now, the other couple of nuances that we want to mention about the VASs during the MMTTs, and again, this is really a repetition of what Britt said yesterday, is that when they complete the first VAS after they consume the shake or eat the meal, they have an additional item that asks them to rate the pleasantness of the food they just consumed. It's the only time we have to do that. So after they consume their food, they're going to have that one additional item. The other additional item that is administered all throughout the VASs during the MMTTs is the nausea question. So they're asked how nauseous they are. So it's just an additional item that's tacked on to the VASs. It'll be nice and automated, so it wouldn't really, you may not even notice it, but that is an additional item. So those are the only things that I have to update on the VAS. I want to stop there and see if there are any questions, because we want to tie this together with Britt's discussion from yesterday. No questions? Great. All right, let's move on now and talk about module 1. Okay, so for those of you that watched our presentations to the steering committee for contextual measures, you're well aware that module 1 is really where most of the burden is. So from a contextual measures standpoint, the packet, the battery, is largest for module 1. It's going to take a good bit of time for people to complete the module 1 packet. We want you to know that we spent a lot of time and kind of tried to be really empirical at identifying what constructs to assess during module 1, and also how to most reliably and validly assess them in the shortest period of time. So we of course looked at some kind of priorities from the different clinical centers. We reviewed each and every one of the grants and tried to definitely assess the constructs that they found a priority, but a lot of thought went into this. Regardless, the battery is still really long. So we estimate the battery will take about 116 minutes to complete. So let's just assume it's really a 2-hour battery. All right. Now that's our guess, but we don't really know how long it's going to take until we test it. And we can hopefully test this as soon as next week. So Ronke hopes to launch the REDCap system next week. And we'll have each and every center go in and have 4 or 5 people with varying backgrounds, varying degrees of education, complete the battery and see how long it takes and get their feedback about it. So if it ends up being too long, we want to know about that really soon. If it takes only, say, 90 minutes or something, we'd like to know that as well. But it is a pretty extensive battery. I will also now go through the list of instruments, and remember that table 10 in the protocol, it includes a nice summary of the instruments without a lot of excessive detail. But again, all of the details for administration that you need to know are in the model. All right, the other thing that we want to mention is that when people enroll in module 1, we will ask them a single item about any life changes that have occurred since they participated in All of Us. So let's say they enrolled in All of Us a 1.5 years ago, and since then they got in a really bad car wreck and they got divorced or they had a baby or whatever it is. We want to get a record of any major life changes that occurred since they enrolled in All of Us. So I have that one single item ahead of time. Now, when we get to the other All of Us surveys, we try to be really diligent here and not overburden participants by having them repeat All of Us surveys that they had just completed, say 4 or 5 months ago. So remember, as part of MPH, we can analyze the All of Us data, right? So we can analyze their basic survey data, their lifestyle survey data, and so forth. And we're asking participants to repeat certain instruments if they hadn't completed in a certain period of time. And so again, hopefully this can be automated within REDCap, but if it isn't, then it's up to you all to make sure that we're administering the correct things. So very briefly, this is what we're going to do. So for the social determinants of health survey from all of us, which is an optional survey for all of us, for us, it's mandatory. What that means is that if they completed it during all of us, they don't have to repeat it at all during MPH. So we're just going to take that data, whether or not it was 2 months completed 2 months ago or 2 years ago. If they completed the optional survey, then we're okay. We don't have to administer it during all of us. If they didn't, we're going to, of course, administer it. However, the mental health and well-being survey, those constructs are labile. That means that they can change, week to week, day in, day out. So for the mental health and well-being survey, we're going to have the NPH participants repeat those surveys if they completed them greater than 4 weeks ago. So if they completed them 3 weeks ago, we'll just use that data from all of us. If it was 5 weeks ago, then we're going to have them repeat those instruments. Now, with regards to the core surveys, so we have the basic survey, the overall health survey, and the lifestyle factor survey. We're only going to have NPH participants repeat those instruments if it has been greater than 12 months since they completed them for all of us. So if it's been greater than 12 months, they have to complete part of the basic core survey. They also have to complete part of the overall health survey, and they have to repeat all of the lifestyle factor survey. So we eliminated items from those 2 surveys that were kind of repetitive, that shouldn't really change. So again, we tried to reduce burden, but to still get the important pieces from those surveys. The other thing is that this was for the Amines group. So there's a desire to obtain free text responses and have people free text and kind of state what they feel about their diet satisfaction, about quality of life, mood, and things like that. So we identified some free text questions that will be administered after the weight history questionnaire, after the diet satisfaction, social networks, and sleep survey. So this will all be automated in REDCap. So after the person finishes those instruments where they complete the Likert ratings, they'll receive a single item that says something to the nature of, tell us how satisfied you are with your diet, or what types of things, what do you think about your diet satisfaction, something nice and open-ended, and they will enter in a response via free text in the computer system. Okay, lastly, this is the last couple of slides before we go into more detail on the instruments. This slide, I think, is probably the most important, and I really want to try to drive this home, folks. Like, the most important thing for the contextual measures group is that you get all the data, right? So these are survey data that they can complete online via REDCap at any time during their participation in Module 1. So right after they enroll, they could go home, log in, and start filling these out. Or they can wait till the last minute and show up for their last visit the visit to visit and start their MMTT without ever having completed a single item. That would be a problem for us, but it means that as researchers and as coordinators, you all have to have them complete all those other items then and all the instruments during the MMTT. So it's really important for us to get good complete data. And in traditional studies that are multi-site, where we're giving very, very similar instruments, we have almost no missing data. Like, we quantify it, we can have less than like 0.1% of missing data. We can have very good data, but it requires a lot of diligence by us to make sure that we're getting that data and that we can detect if our participant didn't complete an instrument or if they skipped a number of items within an instrument. So as you all know, some of these instruments have subscales that consist of maybe 7 items. So if a person misses 3 of those items, you don't have a subscale for that instrument. You just won't have that data. So by all means, we're going to ask you to go through and to basically ask each participant to go back and fill out items that they skipped or complete any surveys that they skipped before they finish their visit to session. The other thing that we'll mention is that, of course, these data are electronic. So Ronke and team, we will try to evaluate over time if we're seeing a lot of missing data. But again, by the time we detect that, it's too late, right? Because we have a number of subjects through the system then that didn't complete data. And so we can't really go back and get it. The other thing we'll mention is that for the contextual measures group, we did eliminate all the items that assess suicidal ideation or intent. And this was due to some concern from the sites that we didn't want to staff psychiatric or psychological referral services. So those items were eliminated. However, after they complete the contextual measures group, they will receive a form that provides basically the all of us referral information, where it has like the national suicide hotline, the national crisis hotline. It has a lot of referrals in both Spanish and English. And so they will receive that. So if they happen to be depressed or whatever, they will have some resources to call. All right, lastly, before we go through the instruments, we are going to provide participants with feedback on a select few instruments. And we selected these instruments because we don't think that it will impact the data in modules 2 and 3. So we're generating forms that will provide a description of what their score is and what it means, and what is the construct that we're referring to. So we've already completed this for the eating inventory. We're still doing this for the other instruments. But as you can see here, they'll receive feedback on their eating inventory scores, the Munich circadian rhythm instrument, intuitive eating, the sleep survey. The all of us instruments, our understanding is that they can obtain that information themselves. So we won't necessarily provide that to them. They'll get information on their self-reported social network size and also possibly the weight history questionnaire, if we can figure out how to do so easy enough. So that information will be kind of static for us to provide to the participants when they finish up module 1. All right, now we're going to go through the instruments here. And so what I did is I pulled the tables from the protocol, and then I made updates, kind of call out boxes to show you all what has changed. All right, so these changes will be codified in the MOP within about 4 or 5 days or so. But these are the changes that have occurred as of very recently. Let's assume I don't need to sign in. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Okay, so this first series of instruments, if you guys have a question about a certain survey, just let me know and we'll talk about it. But the critical thing about this first part of the table is that we are going to be assessing the participants' home and work address and also the history of their home address, like say if they moved, but we're not going to collect information on GPS. So the GPS sensor has been removed from the protocol. And Kayla and Bruce are trying to find alternative funds to support that research. We very much would like to collect that data, but it's not part of the main protocol. Hopefully it'll be a supplemental study. Now here we have another series of instruments. And the thing that I forgot to mention earlier, folks, is that the order of the instruments goes in the order that they were prioritized during selection. So you can see here on the left, can I make this disappear? Thank you. Sorry, can you say again? Thank you. Okay, so everything is rank ordered in priority. So we have 3 different priority levels, 1, 2, and 3. And so what you can see here is that the instruments with the highest priority are administered first. So that was purposeful. And we think that therefore, if a person fatigues or whatever, that will have a lot of the main instruments assessed. But of course, they can always come back to this later when they feel more refreshed and finish everything else. Now, here we have the next series of instruments. The thing I want to note is that the All of Us Mental Health and Wellbeing Survey is slotted right into this little area right here. So that's where people will complete it. Also, please recognize that a lot of the constructs that we wanted to assess were already assessed in the All of Us instruments. And so it took us a long time to do a compare and contrast and like eliminate things that were redundant. So as far as we can tell, the ACE-Q, the Childhood Adverse Events Questionnaire, is administered in the mental health survey. So this will be eliminated because it will be captured in the mental health survey. So we're not going to administer it twice. Additionally, we originally identified an online delay discounting task. We couldn't really program that or secure a license, so it's been eliminated. So this 5-trial delay discounting has been replaced with the 27-item monetary choice questionnaire. Not a major deal there. Okay, here we have the last series of instruments. Again, we have the surveys from all of us, the subjective social status scale, and information about the household down there at the bottom. Thank you. All right, now we'll quickly go through modules 2 and 3, which is nice and easy. So again, most of the burden is associated with module 1. So the key thing about these modules is that we made the battery the same throughout the modules, just so it'll be nice and simple for us all to remember. And really all you have to remember is that you administer this battery before and after each diet in modules 2 and 3. So it bookends everything. And so here is the battery. Again, it's really nice and pretty brief. So we will utilize, again, the retrospective VASs to assess appetite before and after each diet in both the modules. We will then administer a modified food craving inventory. And we say it's modified because we're just going to have the instructions tweaked so that instead of making ratings for your level of cravings over the past 4 weeks, it'll just be for the past 2 weeks. So we're capturing the diet exposure and nothing more. The diet acceptability scale will also be administered. And we'll also ask 2 open-ended items that are described right here that ask about what they liked most about the diet and also what they like least about the diet. We'll then administer the PHQ-4, which is literally just 4 items, 2 assessing anxiety, 2 assessing mood. And then we'll administer the 4-item perceived stress scale. So this should be about a 10-minute series of instruments. It should be nice and short and really quite easy to administer. All right, folks, so I think that is it. Great, so we'll stop there and see if you all have any questions or discussion points.